Hey book babes, welcome back to another video. I am so excited for today's video because this is part 2 of my anticipated 2025 book releases. I decided to separate all of the book releases that I'm excited to read this year into separate videos because I had made my list and I realized that there were so many books on it. And if I did it in one video, I think it would have been like 2 hours long. So I decided to break it down into separate videos based on genre. So I already did a video on all the romance books I'm excited to read in 2025. I posted that one last week. So if you're interested in that one, I will link it in the description below. And today I'm going through all of the thrillers. I decided to separate thrillers and mysteries into 2 separate videos because I know there's always like a mystery aspect to a thriller, but it's not the same vibe. Like often with a mystery, it'll be kind of like a cute or cozy mystery. And then a thriller is more like thrilling or suspenseful. So I'll have a separate video for strictly mystery. But it was really hard to narrow down this list because there are a lot of thrillers coming out in 2025. But I was able to narrow it down into the top 11 books that I'm most interested in for 2025. There's a lot more that I might just pick up, but these are the 11 that have caught my interest in some way or another, whether it's an author I've already read and liked, or an author that I've read and didn't like, but I kind of want to give them another shot, or authors that I haven't read, but I've just heard so many good things about their previous books. So I'm really excited to get into these ones. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first book on my list is actually one I've already read. It's the only one I've read on this list in 2025, and that is Beautiful Ugly by Alice Feeney. This was the first book that I read this year. I just honestly couldn't wait for it. I have already posted a spoiler review and a non-spoiler review on my channel for this book. So if you're interested in that, the links will be in the description below. But this book came out January 14th. It is only 304 pages, so it's a pretty fast read. Essentially, the premise of this book is about a man named Grady. It's his viewpoint. He's married to a woman named Abby. Grady is on the phone with Abby as she's driving home from work one night, and she sees a woman on the road. She gets out to help, and then Grady never hears from her again. He later finds her abandoned car, and her purse and keys and phone are all in the car, but she's nowhere to be found. A year goes by. He's still grieving his missing wife. He never found out what happened to her. He doesn't know if she's alive or dead, but he decides to escape to this remote island off the coast of Scotland so he could kind of gather his thoughts together and continue writing as he's an author. And while on this island, he sees someone who looks an awful lot like his wife. So I did already read this book. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. It wasn't like, it was just kind of whatever for me. I do want to read more Alice Feeney just to see if I like her as an author because I didn't really hate the writing in it. The book just kind of fell a little bit flat for me, but overall, I still think that I would enjoy more of Alice Feeney. So yeah, so this was first on my 2025 anticipated book releases for thrillers. I did already get to read this one, so check 1 for me. Next on my list is a book that already has come out, but I have not read it. It's The Crash by Frida McFadden. This book came out on January 28th. It currently has a 3.79 on Goodreads, which I feel like is not too bad for a brand new release. Frida McFadden is the author of the very popular thriller series, The Housemaid. Now, I read The Housemaid last year. This was my first Frida McFadden, and I have to say I didn't love it. It reminded me a little bit of Colleen Hoover's writing, which I am not the biggest fan of Colleen Hoover either, but I want to give her another shot. I don't like to stop at just 1 or 2 books by an author. I like to read a couple, maybe 3 or 4 books by them, just because I feel like it kind of allows me to determine whether or not I actually do not like an author. So I will be reading her newest release, The Crash. The Crash is about a woman named Tegan. She is 8 months pregnant. She is driving to stay with her brother in Maine. I think she's running from something, but I'm not sure what. She is driving through a blizzard and is stranded on the side of the road because her car died in rural Maine. A couple who is driving by rescues her and offers her to stay in their cabin for the night. And I think this couple is maybe dangerous in some way. I'm not really sure, but it seems like a very, very suspenseful book. It seems like there's not really a moment of peace for this main character. So I am looking forward to it because I think it's going to be very different from The Housemaid. The premise just seems very drastically different. So I'm looking forward to that one. And if I don't like it, then I will definitely read at least one more book by Frida McFadden. So just let me know in the comments which one, if you've read any Frida McFadden, which Frida McFadden books you think I should read that you think I'll like, because I do really want to like this author. She's extremely popular and she comes out with a lot of new releases. So I don't want to like miss out if I don't like her writing. Like I want to be able to read them and enjoy them and talk about them. So if you think of any Frida McFadden books that I might like, please let me know. I know she just came out with The Boyfriend last year. I heard it wasn't that great, but I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. So let me know if you think of any other Frida McFadden books you think I might like. Next on my list is A Killing Cold by Kate Ellis Marshall. This one came out on February 4th, so not that long ago, and it has a 3.89 on Goodreads. I have never read Kate Ellis Marshall before, but I do own her popular book that came out in 2022, What Lies in the Woods. This one was just so popular when it came out, and I have yet to read it, so I really do want to read that this year. So this book is about a woman named Theodora. She is engaged to a man named Connor. Connor is very wealthy. He's very charming. He's a member of a very powerful family. He decides to bring her to his family's winter retreat to introduce her, but weird things start happening while she's there. She receives threatening messages on her phone telling her to stay away from Connor. She sees footprints below the window of the room that she's staying in. She also finds a photo of herself as a child in the cabin. So kind of eerie. She basically realizes that she's in danger, that this family has a lot of secrets that they don't want out. She tries to understand kind of what's happened to her as a child because it seems like maybe she's doesn't remember a lot. She's kind of repressed a lot of things that have happened to her as a child. So maybe this is all connected in some way. And that's all I know, but it sounds really good. So that's A Killing Cold by Kate Ellis Marshall. I'm really excited for it. I want to pick it up and start reading it soon because it seems kind of like a good winter thriller since it's obviously takes place during the winter. So I think it'll be really good to read right now. Next on the list is You Are Fatally Invited by Ande Pelego. This just came out February 11th and it has a 3.88 on Goodreads. I think this book is the author's debut novel, which is really exciting. So I think what happens in this book is a very famous author invites a thriller author, Mila, to host a writer's retreat on his island. The guest list has a bunch of other popular thriller authors, and Mila does not like one of these authors. So she uses this opportunity to plan this author's murder. But something goes wrong and it seems like there is actually another killer on the island. I'm not sure who. It could be one of the other writers or it could be somebody else. And Mila now has to escape because she is the target. So it's a very interesting premise. It's one that I've never heard before. But I'm very excited. I love a debut. I love getting to see an author's first published work, and I think that this one's going to be really good. So I'm very excited to read this one. We have Famous Last Words by Gillian McAllister. This one comes out on February 25th. Gillian McAllister is an author that I recently discovered I love. I read Wrong Place, Wrong Time for the first time last year. This was my first Gillian McAllister, and I absolutely fell in love with her writing. This book just had so many amazing twists and turns, and I just couldn't see anything coming. I really, really loved this book so much. So you can imagine that I'm very excited for her newest release. So Famous Last Words is about a woman named Camila who just finished maternity leave. She just dropped her daughter off at daycare for the first time. And at home, her husband Luke is not there, which is weird, I guess. And he leaves kind of a weird cryptic note for her. Then she sees on the news that there is a hostage situation in London. And the police tell her that Luke is involved, but not as a hostage. He's actually the gunman. So based off of Wrong Place, Wrong Time, this is very Gillian McAllister. This premise is she likes to play around with time a lot. She likes to play around with just people's personalities, people acting completely out of the ordinary. Especially in this one, it's very similar of way of her husband was not who she thought he was, And it's just interesting. It's just, she has very interesting premises. So I'm very much looking forward to this book. I know it comes out at the end of this month. I'm hoping to read it and put it on my TBR for March. This next book is by an author who I've never heard of before. This book will Bury Me by Ashley Winstead. There are two very popular books, I guess, that Ashley Winstead has written. The first is In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, and the second is Midnight is the Darkest Hour. So this is a story about Jane. She just lost her father unexpectedly and is looking for a distraction. She gets into true crime and befriends just a bunch of true crime enthusiasts who kind of teach her how to find out who a killer is, I guess, from afar via just true crime podcasts and documentaries, I'm assuming. She kind of becomes like obsessed with it, and then lo and behold, there's a murder, I think in the town or the college that she goes to or somewhere local, and Jane and her new true crime friends are determined to solve it, and Jane gets a little bit in over her head while she's trying to solve this crime. So it sounds pretty good. I am hoping that I love it and that once I read Ashley Winstead, I fall in love with her writing, kind of like I did with Gillian McAllister, and then I can read her other two really popular books. So this book, Will Bury Me, comes out on March 25th. Then we have Parents Weekend by Alex Finlay. This comes out on May 6th. Alex Finlay is another author who I've never heard of, but he wrote another popular book called If Something Happens to Me. So in this book, there are 5 families who are visiting their children who are in their first year of college for a weekend, and a dinner is planned for the first night of this parents' weekend, and their children never show up to this dinner. The parents start to panic, they call campus police, search parties are formed, and I think the whole book is really just trying to figure out what happens to these kids. Because there's no main character mentioned in the summary, I'm going to assume that this book is told from a few different viewpoints, which I absolutely love. I love when a story has a bunch of different perspectives and it brings the story together and you get all these different, just points of views. And I think it's really exciting. So I love when a thriller is told in that way. I think this also marks the return of an FBI agent who maybe makes an appearance in some of Alex Finlay's other books. So I love a bunch of standalones in an interconnected series. I love hunting for Easter eggs. So once again, if I love this book, then I will definitely try to read some of Alex Finlay's other books and look for those Easter eggs. Next, we have Don't Let Him In by Lisa Jewell. This comes out on June 24th. Lisa Jewell is an immensely popular thriller author who I have disappointedly never read before. I need to fix that this year. She's written Then She Was Gone, None of This Is True. I even own her 2021 release, The Night She Disappeared, yet I've never read her. I have to fix this. Don't Let Him In follows the story of 3 women. Nina, who is a recent widow, she finds solace in a man named Nick, who is very charming. Then we have Ash, who is Nina's daughter. She is suspicious of Nick. She thinks he's a bit too good to be true and starts investigating his past. Then we have Martha, who is a florist living nearby. Martha is troubled by her husband Al's increasingly frequent absences. She thinks there might be something wrong in her marriage. And as Ash digs into Nick's past and Martha becomes more suspicious of Al, the lives of these 3 women seem to kind of intertwine, and there's a major secret to be revealed that we obviously don't know. So it sounds intriguing. I don't know fully what to expect from this. I've never read Lisa Jewell before, so I don't really know kind of what her writing style is, but I'm really, really looking forward to it. I am going to read her newest release first, and then if I love it, I'm going to start backtracking and start reading her other popular books, starting with the one that I already own, obviously, but I do want to read her other really popular ones too. Next, we have The Women in Suite 11 by Ruth Ware. This comes out on July 8th. I recently read Ruth Ware for the first time in her 2024 release, One Perfect Couple. This one wasn't my fave. I definitely appreciated the premise. I appreciated the attempt. I appreciated the writing, but I think that the second half of the book fell very flat for me. I just didn't think it was executed as well as I had expected. I think I had pretty high expectations for this book because I've heard so much of Ruth Ware as an author. So I definitely was disappointed, but it didn't stop me from wanting to read more of her books. So I know that The Woman in Suite 11 is apparently a sequel to The Woman in Cabin 10, which is Ruth Ware's like arguably her most popular book. Now, I've never read The Woman in Cabin 10, but I definitely want to because I want to read it before I read this book, especially if it is a sequel and there will be similar characters to it. But I will say I have heard mixed reviews about The Woman in Cabin 10. So if you have read Ruth Ware and it's not The Woman in Cabin 10, can you leave a comment below and let me know what other books I should read by Ruth Ware? Because I don't want to go into another book expecting to not be that impressed by it, because I think that Ruth Ware, I think she has like she's a very talented thriller author. I think that she really does build the suspense very well, and I want to read a book by her that I'm not going to be conditioned to thinking that I'm not going to like. Of course, I'm still going to read The Woman in Cabin 10, but I also want to read some other books by her. So as I said before, The Woman in Suite 11 is the sequel to The Woman in Cabin 10. It's number 2 in the Lo Blacklock series. Lo Blacklock has been invited to the opening of a hotel in the Swiss Alps. She is a journalist and she wants to interview the reclusive billionaire owner of this hotel. Instead, she finds a woman who is claiming to be his mistress in danger, and Lo searches for the truth. And I think that this story kind of takes her across all of Europe, all these different countries in Europe, and it's kind of like this mysterious, thrilling chase. So I'm definitely going to read The Woman in Cabin 10 first so I can kind of build and understand Lo Blacklock's character and personality, and maybe find some Easter eggs in The Woman in Suite 10. The Woman in Suite 11. I feel like the third book in this series is going to be like The Woman in Room 12 and then The Woman in Parking Lot 13. Or I just feel like, I don't know, I feel like maybe the titles could be a little bit more clever, but maybe they are clever. Maybe like once you read them, you're like, oh yeah, that's a clever title. But for me, let's come up with something different. I don't know. Next is Forget Me Not by Stacey Willingham, coming out on August 26th. Stacey Willingham is an author who I thought I had never heard of before, but then I realized that I actually have her book, A Flicker in the Dark, which I think is actually extremely popular. Of course, never read it, but this is about Claire, who returns to her childhood home. Claire has a bit of a sad childhood. Her older sister, Natalie, had disappeared 22 years ago, and Claire has tried really hard to forget this trauma. And she decides to take a job at a vineyard near her hometown. And while she's there, she kind of discovers this diary, this like old diary that I think she doesn't know who it's written by, but it details a bunch of unsolved crimes. And she starts to think that maybe her sister's disappearance is connected to this vineyard. It's a farm and a vineyard, I think. I'm not really sure. So it sounds interesting. It sounds different than your classic thriller, kind of unsolved murder thriller. Like this one actually has some backstory to it, which I feel like is going to be kind of fun. So I'm looking forward to that. I think before I even read that though, I'm going to read A Flicker in the Dark, because I know that I remember that this book was so popular. When did this book come out? Okay, this book came out in 2021. Yeah, 2021. So I want to read this one first. It's so funny how I didn't even realize that I have heard of this author before, because when I saw her name, I was like, Stacey Willingham, who is that? And then I was like, oh my gosh, like this book is so popular and everybody loved it. So I'm going to read this first. Then I'm going to read what's this book called? Then I'm going to read Forget Me Not. Okay, last but certainly not least is With a Vengeance by Riley Sager. This comes out on June 10th. Riley Sager has just been coming out with a bunch of bangers the last couple of years. His most recent release is Middle of the Night, which came out last year, and he's already got another one coming out. I mean, it's just, and I actually haven't read this one. I picked this up solely because of the cover. I've heard of Riley Sager before, like he's a pretty popular thriller author. Never read him before, but the cover of this book just really like spoke to me. I don't know why it's giving me like 1970s vibes. I don't even think this takes place in 1970, but for some reason it just gives me that vibe of like serial killer 1970 vibe. I could be right. I could be wrong. I don't know what this book is about, but I really want to read this book. I really want to read his newest book. I know that he is just so, apparently his plot twists are just out of this world good. And he also creates a really good, eerie, creepy feeling vibe, which I'm here for. So I really am excited for this one. He's come out with so many books that are just at the top of all these thriller lists. He's kind of like Lisa Jewell, you know, like just everybody wants to read him. So I'm looking forward to it. So in With a Vengeance, a woman named Anna is seeking revenge against the 6 people who destroyed her family in 1942. 12 years later, she lures them onto a luxury train so she can expose their crimes and deliver them to justice. However, her plan is disrupted when one of the passengers is murdered, and it becomes very clear that somebody else is also seeking revenge. And Anna now needs to protect these people who have destroyed her family while also trying to uncover the killer. So there's a lot going on in this premise, and it sounds crazy, and it sounds like crazy enough to work. You know, it sounds like everything can kind of come together in this neat little bow at the end, which is what you want in a good thriller mystery kind of novel. So I'm looking forward to it. I've been wanting to read Riley Sager for such a long time. I've just heard so many good things. I know that there are some mixed reviews on his 2024 release, Middle of the Night, but I have read those reviews and I feel that I still will like this book. I think I'm going to be on the glasses half full side of these reviews, so I'm really pumped. I'm definitely going to read this one first just because I've heard so many things about it, and even though I don't really know what the book is about, but I know that I've heard like good reviews about this book. And then in June, I will hop into With a Vengeance. Okay, so that's everything. Those are the 11 thriller books that are coming out this year that I have singled out as ones that I'm excited to read. And I think it is a really good mix of a bunch of different types of thrillers. So I will keep you updated on when I read these books. If you're interested, I post a lot of book reviews, book hauls, bookish videos, and of course, I will be discussing all of the books that I do read from this video, as well as all of the other genres of the 2025 book releases that I will be releasing in other videos. So if you're interested in those and you just really like to talk about books and you want someone to talk about books with, I feel like I'm your girl. I love to read. I love to discuss books. It's the whole reason I have this channel, is so I can actually just talk to somebody about the books that I read and actually get my thoughts out. So if you're interested, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss a video from me. Please leave a comment so we can discuss all things books. I love discussing all things books. And yeah, so I think I'm going to go ahead and end the video there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.